Well, a very good morning to everybody who's logged in today for the Resilient Lincolnshire series, which has now been on since the end of April. And we're very, very pleased and delighted to bring yet another episode to you this week. Now, I'm Ruchi Agarwal. I'm the Director of Business Development for the Lincoln International Business School at the University of Lincoln. And it's my privilege and pleasure to host this today. So the Resilient Lincolnshire series, for those of you who've been following us would know, but for those who are joining us new today, I'll give you a quick brief, has been our attempt at the business school to stay connected with the industry, with issues that matter to the industry, and to keep us thinking together through the times that we live in. So the business school has always been very, very close to businesses in the greater Lincolnshire region, and we intended to continue to do that. And this is our digital platform for doing so. So we run a couple of things on this. One is the executive education series that you'll find nearly every Wednesday coming to you from an academic with a topic of interest to business and to industry. This series that you're seeing and watching today is called Business Beyond the Curve, which is a series of thought leaders and engagements and voices that we want to hear of the industry in a panel format and a discussion format, keeping it quite informal, but bringing together stories and topics of resilience in Lincolnshire. And that's proven to be very, very key and important for all of us to participate in. So we usually bring a topic of interest to businesses, to people, to academics, to students, and try and bring them all together through this series called Business Beyond the Curve. Now, today we've taken a slight detour from having a topic of general interest to shining a spotlight on something which is iconic in our calendar in Lincolnshire. Year after. Okay, yeah, sorry, it's back on live again, technology and some pieces of it. But we're really pleased to be bringing to you today a spotlight on the Lincolnshire Show, because the Lincolnshire Show, which has been a part of our landscape, has now had to repivot itself and is actually coming in a very, very exciting format. And we thought it was wonderful if we could shine a light on the Lincolnshire Show this year and on this platform called Resilient Lincolnshire. So as always, with me, and to be able to interview our wonderful panelists that we have to shine the spotlight is Dr. Craig Marsh. And Craig, good morning.
Morning, Richard. How are you?
Sorry for the blip. I don't know what happened. I just lost the visual there.
No, it's fine. It's something we've experienced intermittently over the last few months, and I think everybody understands the challenges we've got with our internet connection. So fingers crossed that it holds up for the next few minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. Craig, and the Lincolnshire Show has been such an iconic part of the fabric of this county and even beyond the county, isn't it? So I've been multiple times, a couple of times. I'm sure you visited it many times as well.
Well, indeed, and we, as you know, the university has a very key, for us anyway, a key part in the history of the show, actually, and over 100 years now, I believe. But I'm just so interested to find out from our guests how they're managing to react to the situation and create a virtual show. It's going to be such an interesting discussion.
I know, indeed, and I think we've got just the right people for that panel. So if you'll allow me, I'll bring them on. And I'm so delighted and so privileged to have with us. And first, I'd like to introduce Jane Southall. Jane, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Jane, it's a privilege and pleasure to have you here today. And Jane, you probably, for the Lincolnshire context and the showground context, need no introduction. But just for those who want to know, you have been the CEO of the showground for a long time now and have been running the show successfully. So, very, very many thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you. And
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, for those who didn't know, the Agricultural Society was actually formed in 1869, but it would have been the 136th actual show this year. So it's the first virtual one, but it is the 136th Lincolnshire Show.
Phenomenal. And the show goes on, Jane.
It does.
Thanks for the resilience that you're showing in it. So we'll talk more about that on this program. Yeah. Right, great. I also want to add a second panelist, Steph. Steph, good morning.
Good morning.
Great, lovely to see you here. And Steph again is a very key voice in Lincolnshire. The chairman of the Gusto Group and many business interests here. And I know you've been a key player and a key partner to Jane in bringing the show alive this year. So thank you for joining us on the panel.
That's a pleasure. I look forward to it. It should be an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Steph. Thanks. Oh, I also want to introduce our next panelist, Liz. Liz, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Liz, because I hear that you've been engaged with the Lincolnshire Show and much more than that for a number of years now.
Yes, we have. We've been supporting with the promotion of the show nationally as well as locally through public relations, communications, and also the new techniques that we're using. And so we've been working with the team on coming up with the ideas for taking it virtual this year. So that's been really quite new and interesting.
Excellent, excellent. And Liz is the Managing Director of Cartwright Communications, just by way of introduction. So I'll hand you over to Craig, and I'll see you at the end of the show.
That's great. Thanks, Rishi, and welcome to all of our guests. Well, that always promises to be a fascinating discussion this morning. And I think perhaps if it's okay with you, we could start with a little bit of the long history of the show. Jane, perhaps we can bring you in and you can just give us a little bit of, for perhaps any listeners who aren't aware. I'm sure there must be one or two who aren't aware of the Lincolnshire Show and its long histories. Just so up to this year, just give us a sort of flavour of the characteristics of the Lincolnshire Show and its importance in Lincolnshire, Jane.
Yeah, okay. Well, if we start off by saying that the Lincolnshire Agricultural Society is a charity, so our objectives are to promote food farming in the countryside, and one of those is to hold a county show. So it would have been our 136th actual show this year, as I said before. The Agricultural Society was formed in 1869. And there's 20 agricultural societies across the country with showgrounds, and they hold actual shows. And the reason behind the show traditionally was to bring farmers together so they could talk about farming techniques, etc. And obviously the show has evolved through the years, but it's still very much an agricultural show, but with a lot more added to it as well.
So that's its heart, and that's where it's played that critical role in the life of the county over so long, over so many years. And then has it in its most recent institution, Jane? I mean, what's been your sort of ideas about where the show was going up to this year, if you like? I mean, of course, clearly you have been involved in the ideas of that. So do you want to say a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I think the Lincolnshire Show is great that it's still got its agricultural tradition of agricultural dealers and the farming and the livestock, etc. We very much engage with schools. So we have sort of often up to 50 schools, and we work with them on the national curriculum. We talk about, we give them projects to do with food and farming, but also the Agricultural Show, the Lincolnshire Show, is a great platform for businesses across Lincolnshire to come together and to showcase what they do, and it's a great way of shouting about and showcasing what we have to offer in the county.
Indeed, which has certainly been my experience of it as well. It's just been a fascinating place for that sort of meeting of ideas. Actually, I have to say, as well as meeting a lot of our local and regional farmers, I've always found that quite fascinating, just to have a chat about their experiences and the challenges they're facing as businesses, actually. So I know that's been a big part of my enjoyment of visiting the show over the last few years. So, Jane, thanks just for setting the scene in terms of where the show had got to up to this year, and we'll absolutely come on and talk about where it is now. So, and at that point, maybe just bring in Steph and Liz. Perhaps starting with you, Steph, and in terms of your role as chair of Gustavs, perhaps I don't know, it's maybe not so obvious to our guests what your involvement has been with the show, because I know you have been involved up to now. So, do you want to just say a little bit about that, Steph, and how does your joining?
Yeah, well, I am Jane's next door neighbour, so
it's a good reason to be here. So you can wave at each other, can you?
Well, when I say next door neighbour, I don't actually live next door to where she lives, but I live next door to the Lincolnshire Showground. So I've built a development of 30 properties on a real sort of eco-sustainable living concept, which is adjacent to the showground. So you can see these trees behind me here. Literally, the showground is just behind where I'm sitting here this morning. So yeah, I run a group of companies, and the very quick background to this story, my connection with actually getting involved in the Lincolnshire Show, is one of the business I have is a business called Global Grad. So we take students that are studying online and we give them travel experiences around the world. So literally, as we were going into lockdown, I've got students out in Southeast Asia, including 2 of my daughters. And my son was also working for me. He's doing his year in industry, year in industry out of his degree, which is an economics degree at Newcastle. So we were merrily going along with life. We've got students halfway around the world and doing all sorts of interesting things. And then lockdown came, all the borders started to close. We managed to get the students back out and back home. And my 2 daughters and son and the other daughter all came into lockdown with me next to the showground. And we thought, well, right, what we're going to do now, obviously planning global travel for students is probably not the right thing to be focusing on at the moment. So we sort of made a decision that probably wasn't really going to happen for the rest of this year. And we decided then, therefore, to focus on trying to build knowledge around putting on digital events. So the first event we put on was with the Lincolnshire Chamber of Commerce. I put a 5-hour webinar on, which sounds very hard work. We broke it down into half-hour elements, and we looked at the future of education, manufacturing, finance, really broke down all the different sectors, and had a really, really interesting 5-hour session with lots of people from, not just from Lincolnshire, from really around the UK. So that was a very successful event. What I thought off the back of that was the benefit you get from actually bringing people together through a digital platform, especially if those people are not necessarily the sort of people that would necessarily sit down together and join in the conversation. So we came up with the concept of the community conversation, which we've basically been running in a village called Collingham. My business is based in Collingham. Prior to me living here, I lived in Collingham. And we're building about 150 properties in Collingham at the moment. So it's a village that we're very much involved with. So we started off this thing called the community conversation. That again brings people from lots of different backgrounds together through a digital platform, talking about their community, and that's really gained a lot of momentum. So when Jane came to me and said, look, we're thinking about doing a digital version of the Lincolnshire Show, I remember the call, Jane, actually, and would you help out with it, and would you put a conference together for the morning? So I said, no problem at all. So that was probably, well, Jane's been working on the digital show for 5 or 6 weeks now, Jane.
So it's 4 weeks we had when we decided, Liz, this is how we're doing it. It was like no pressure. We got 4 weeks to deliver it. Yeah.
So when you put that into perspective, Craig, the speed that you can bring an event together on a digital platform is phenomenal compared to all the logistics of pulling together a real event.
Well, it is, Steph, and actually it has been one of the characteristics of this lockdown, hasn't it? Perhaps not for all businesses, but many businesses have just reacted at lightning speed in various different ways, particularly with the adoption of technology. So while it's impressive to know that you've done this in a sort of 4-week period, I have to say I'm not entirely surprised, particularly with somebody as entrepreneurial as you, that have really got to grips with it and have delivered something. And it's going to be quite interesting to hear about how that's developed and where that's got to. We'll perhaps come on to that. So, but Steph, so that's great. So that has made your connection clear with our conversation. So I appreciate that, and I think it showed actually that the range of different things that you've been involved in, as well as because your day job, if I can call it that, in terms of your chair as Gusto. So thank you for that, Steph. I appreciate it. And now, Liz, I know your connection has been with the show for a few years as well, hasn't it? 7 or 8 years, if I'm right in saying so, with your PR agency. So you've been involved in the past, and so you tell us a little bit about how you're seeing this now, what you've been up to as Jane has been preparing the virtual version of the show.
Very many late night phone calls with Jane. So it's been we Jane contacted me a few weeks ago. I mean, I have to say, you know, it's Jane's idea, and she's ran with it. You know, there was much disappointment that the show couldn't happen this year, and Jane had this great idea. Some other shows around the country have done it, but we're going to be doing it, you know, really quite differently. And Jane asked me if we'd like to support, and of course we jumped at the chance. I think it's fair to say that we were hoping initially to get another couple of counties involved. So we were going to do this sort of super agricultural show, virtual show, but they were probably moving a little too slowly for us, Jane. I think it's fair to say. So we decided to take the baton and run with it. And so the first thing we needed to do was to think about how we were going to stream it. So we started with the website. So that's been done by a Lincoln company, TRS, and they're working night and day on that at the moment. We also linked in with CityX, Dean Graham, who has been really part of that role. We formed a sort of smallish committee. We meet every week, and we have given everybody tasks to take care of. So we've got different areas. We've got equine, agriculture, all of those sort of things that you would ordinarily see, but it's on in web form. And then on the day, what you will see is some pre-recorded videos. There's some special videos that are for the show, and we'll still get Jane on show morning talking to everybody and welcoming everybody to the show. So I'm sure that we don't want to give too much away because we want everybody to tune in on the day and enjoy it. So I'm not going to go into lots and lots of detail, because what you will see is everything that you expect from the show, but online. And as I say, we've brought a little twist to certain things, and we've been able to support, you know, Jane's long-term exhibitors who have supported her for many years in the show, and we've been able to allow them to still exhibit in this virtual show. So we're really excited about it.
That's amazing. So you just whetted the appetite there. So I'm gonna push all three of you to see how much you're prepared to reveal about what it's actually going to look like. But of course, feel free to say no. I'm not telling you, because I know you want to keep a lot of that to yourselves. And I just see one of the comments that we've had in from Marin. I'm just going to show this now. So he did a consultancy project about customer satisfaction at the Lincolnshire Show a few years ago. So Marin knows quite a lot about how customers have been satisfied on the previous version of the show. So. And it sounds like you're pretty convinced that you're going to be able to do something very similar this time around, and how it's going to be achieved in an online setting. So Marin, I think we have an opportunity to come on and talk a bit about what this is going to look like, at least what our guests are going to be prepared to reveal. So Jane, we've heard we've had a little bit of a taster from Steph and Liz. I mean, you know, Steph really emphasised this the community aspect of the show, which of course has been there for 35 years, right? It's been at the centre of the community, and you want to obviously continue that virtually. And Liz has just given us a bit of a hint of some of the sorts of things that may happen in the virtual show. So come on, Jane, tell us a bit more. What can you actually tell us about what the experience is going to be like of a virtual Lincolnshire Show, Jane?
Okay, well, I'm going to just briefly mention the morning bit, and then I'm going to let Steph talk on that. But if you come to the Lincolnshire Show, sort of 8 o'clock in the morning, there's lots of breakfast meetings where businesses come together and they exchange ideas, and they have speakers, etc. Then normally the general public actually start arriving, say about 10:30, and that's the flavour that we're going to have to do again. So I'll let Steph explain the first bit. From 11 o'clock, people can come onto the show. We'll have lots of different zones. We'll have the main ring, we'll have the education zone, we'll have the Lincolnshire kitchen and cookery zone, we'll have the exhibitor zone, and we'll have the countryside and heritage zone, and we'll have the livestock and equine and agricultural zone. And in those zones, there'll be lots of to see and lots of do. You'll see farmers talking about what they do. There'll be main ring acts. We have got the falcons zooming into the main ring, and we've still got with a webcam. We've got cookery demonstrations. Some will be live, some will be pre-recorded. We'll have a presenter which will take you through the show so that you can see, and also there'll be exhibitors who have supported us for so many years, giving them an opportunity to still show who they are, and they've got direct them to their website. So I think it's given everyone a flavour of the Lincolnshire Show, but also perhaps people who've never been to the Lincolnshire Show before, so they can actually see what the Lincolnshire Show is all about. And we've done lots of competitions. We've got armchair agriculture. We've sent competitions out so children can get involved. We're asking people to put bunting up to sort of really feel that they're part of the Lincolnshire Show, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Sounds absolutely amazing. Because I mean, also when you know the show kind of at its heart, of course, is a very physical display, right? So you've got animals, you've got tractors, you've got all the, and so you found a way of replicating what people will know and love about the show, and moving all of that online. So what's fascinating about that is you're creating as much as possible the experience that people would have had it been virtually. Is that right? That sounds like your design intentions of that.
Yes.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's just amazing how that's going to all come together. So, and I think perhaps we could just dig in. I'd be quite interesting to hear from colleagues about what have been, from a business point of view, if you like, what have been the design considerations about that? I mean, perhaps some of the challenges that you've had to overcome, because I know you don't want to reveal too much about what the actual experience is going to be like. So Steph, I know you've obviously been critical to this conversation. Can you just share with us perhaps some of the considerations, some of the things that you've been thinking through as you've been preparing for it, without necessarily telling us exactly what it's going to look like?
Yeah, I think the way I visualize things, my at heart and my mind is the mind of an architect in terms of the way I look at things. I'm not a qualified architect, but I have an architect's practice. I'm a house builder, developer, and so I always feel that I look at things as sort of physical structures. So when I'm looking at building a business model, then I can very much visualize the business model. And interestingly, as we've thought about the way we're building the architecture for this digital version of the Lincolnshire Show, it's very much about looking at what people would be doing in real life, in the real life version of Lincolnshire Show, and trying to mirror that in this digital world. So that's very much the challenge, or the way that I think about it, to try to develop the concept. So hopefully what the morning will be like for those people that would traditionally wake up on show morning, go down to the show, go to, as Jane says, go to some of the networking events in the morning, have interesting conversations with people that they perhaps haven't been for since the last show. And I think that happens a lot. Quite often when you walk around the Lincolnshire Show, you bump into somebody, say, do you know what, the last time I saw you was in this exact same place last year. So you're trying to recreate that through the morning, through the networking and conference event that we're putting on. So the challenge of it is obviously to use the technology and make the technology work. So what we've decided to do, we're using the Zoom platform. The Zoom platform is a very stable platform. There is other platforms out there, and I'm a really big fan of open source software. And so we also do use an open source platform as well, which we're going to. I'll just talk about that little in a minute. But basically, the concept is that people will register for the breakfast event. They'll wake up at 6:30 in the morning. Hopefully, change it out of their pajamas, but they can be sat in their pajama bottoms, or they can be sat in their pajamas if they want to be sat in their pajamas. And they'll switch on their laptops at 7 o'clock. They'll have half an hour of sort of technical setup. We'll talk to all the guests about how the morning is going to work, so everybody can understand that. And then we'll obviously people will be able to speak to each other through the chat bots, so that they can see who's in there, have a look to see which other faces they recognise. So then it's 7:30, 7:45, we have the first of the breakout sessions. So we're asking companies just to sponsor a breakout room for the cost of, I think it's £60 minimum donation, and everything's being done for charity. So they make a donation, and that gives them the sponsorship of a breakout room. So then we automatically break all the guests out into different breakout rooms. So then there'll be groups of, say, 10 people per breakout room. They can have 10 or 15 minutes chat within that breakout room. that'll be hosted by the sponsor of that particular breakout room, and then everybody comes back in to the main show event. So just imagine you're in this great conferencing hall. You've broken out, you've had your networking session, then you've come back into your main conferencing hall, and then we've got a half an hour discussion following the official opening of the event, which will be done by the president of the Agricultural Society. So then we've got everybody back, and then what we're going to do is have a half-hour discussion about the power of bringing together all the different networks that we have within the county. So we'll have the Chamber of Commerce there, we've got the university there, we'll have the Lincoln Business Club there, we'll have Lincoln Big. There'll be lots of different networks, and I just wanted to sort of get a conversation between all the networks and say, you know, if we all were able to connect with each other better, wouldn't that help to make Lincolnshire more resilient? So
interesting stuff. And Steph, are you thinking about that in terms of, you know, as the theme of that, you know, how dealing with the current crisis, is that the theme of it, or is it kind of just slightly more general of that in terms of?
No, it's. I mean, I think all this is triggered. I mean, the as you're well aware, you've got these mega trends that are happening at the moment. The digitization is a trend that's turned into a mega trend. Partnership and cooperation is a trend that's turning into a mega trend. So all these trends that were directions of travel for the way that our society operates are now absolutely been fast tracked by the lockdown situation. So yes, it is very much driven by lockdown and COVID, and the fact that people are taking a step back from life and reconsidering the type of world they want to walk out into.
Yeah.
And we certainly don't want to be walking back out into exactly the same world that we've walked away from, because it would be such a missed opportunity for everybody.
Right. So that social experience, that networking experience, that consideration of long-term strategic impact for the region, that's all still going to be absolutely at the centre of the show.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's very true. And when I was sort of writing some context notes up when we were putting this together, if you go back in time, when we all stopped being hunter-gatherers and roaming around the countryside and started.
We only have an hour, you realise, Steph.
I'll fast track this very quickly. But then we all settled down in our rural communities, in the farming communities. And in our farming communities, we all had conversations with each other. And so there was an absolute link. I can't remember who it was, but somebody asked me, you know, what's the actual link between what the community conversation and the agricultural show? And I said, well, that's where conversations all started, within our farms, within our rural communities, and that's what we're trying to recreate really with this event.
That's great, and of course, if you going back many years, I suppose the agriculture was the business of Lincolnshire in many significant ways. So you can see that close link with business, albeit that expanded now, is still absolutely at the heart of the show. So, Steph, that's absolutely brilliant. And I just had picking up on one question. I'm going to show this because it's brilliant from Martin. So, can we still drink Pimm's and have a sausage sandwich during the show? And I suspect the answer is probably yes to that. But Liz, if I can, you can eat and drink what you want, really, can't you? But Liz, I just slightly more seriously, I think Martin's point gets to the heart of, I know, which is your concern is in terms of an expert in marketing and market segmentation. You know, whether the customer experience is something that obviously you will have been working on for this particular project. And you being virtual, of course, has, and I think it was Jane mentioned this, it has the opportunity to extend that experience beyond its sort of usual clientele. So can you perhaps talk a little bit, if you would, if that's okay, talk a bit about how you've been thinking about the customer in this regard, and whether that's changing, how well they're reacting to this idea. You know, some traditional farmers who perhaps are not necessarily used to this sort of event. I mean, tell me a bit about that, Liz, if you would. Is that okay?
Okay, so when Jane and I sat down with a blank sheet of paper right back in the very beginning, there is an opportunity there to reach out to new audiences. The show is traditionally midweek, and so not everybody is able to go because they're at work. And equally, we get big amount of school children coming to the show. But we were talking about how we could potentially reach out. So I'd be really interested when we do the sort of the number crunching at the end of the project to see how many people we've attracted outside the county or people who have typically not been before. We were really hoping, Jane, weren't we, to sort of pique the interest of non-show goers who will actually want to come to the real event, hopefully, fingers crossed, next year. So that's been quite a lot of what we've been doing in terms of the PR and making sure that we're getting out publications, getting into publications, not just locally, but wider as well. So we've had a lot of national coverage in the national publications like Farmers Weekly and those sort of things, and some magazines too. And we've seen huge amount of support from the media. They're really excited about it because it's so easy for them to link in with because it's digital. And again, every year we physically get up to 100 journalists a day all reporting at the Lincolnshire Show. It's a phenomenally big part of what we do. And so we've seen a massive interest from lots and lots of media and also different audiences and different sort of people. Farmers are more digital than you would probably think. They are probably the younger generations rather than the older ones. But, this is an opportunity where we're really, really encouraging them to get onto social media and really encouraging them to use their tablets and their phones to link in with us. I think it's really, it's really important. But as you quite rightly said, Craig, a little while ago, all of these things that we're adopting at the moment, Zoom, Teams, and this own platform, and the way we're using social media, all of those people that haven't been familiar with it have had to jump onto it, and in order to have their meetings, do their shopping, all of those sorts of things. So there's been this big surge. I think I read the other day that there's 80% more traffic now through the digital the digital platforms because of the way that we are all using those platforms, either as businesses or as individuals. So there's a massive opportunity here to reach out to new audiences, and that's not gone unrecognised.
So it certainly seems to be the case, Liz, and that's the opportune time, I suppose, in that sense, isn't it? Because people have had, I guess, if they weren't used to it before, people have had about 3 months or so to get used to this sort of virtual world. So your timing is good in that sense, isn't it? It's not as if you were doing this like sort of 3 months ago when it was perhaps a little bit strange for people, and people generally got into different habits, haven't they? Yeah,
we think we've hit the sweet spot. Because the lockdown has eased slightly as well, we've been able to do some other things that a couple of the other agricultural shows haven't been able to do. So I've had my team out with Jane's team and exhibitors this week in social distancing on the showground, doing some new videos and some new stories. So it's going to be really, really current. So we've been able to straddle the sort of the social media, but we've also brought that sort of, I suppose, live element into it as well. So we've been very lucky.
Fantastic. And we've had just one or two other questions I might be just sort of slip in here, and perhaps, Liz, if I can stay with you on this one. Maren has asked, how will you sort of replicate the family day out that has been also part of the ethos of the show? Is that something that you've been able to replicate virtually in that, sort of almost like the sort of bringing that kind of social thing that is comprised within the family units? Is that something you'd be able to think, or have you thought about that?
Yes, well, we certainly hope so, and we've emulated that in the obviously the sectors that we've chosen. We could have I think at one point, Jane, we had a long list of 16 elements to the show that included and many other things. So we had to really stick rigidly to just a handful of those, because we know that what we wanted to do was do what we were doing well, and rather than doing lots of things and not doing it particularly well. So we stuck to those. So you will see lots of opportunities for families. And the way that, because the show is running all day and into the evening, and then it will be available also afterwards, then we're going to encourage everybody, including families, to dip in and enjoy it.
How about that? That's really good, Liz. And I had a question that actually, Jane, perhaps I could bring you in this one, because it's actually about the future of the show. This one's from Gary. I'll just pull it on the screen because this is quite a long one. So it seems to provide an opportunity to reach out to show supporters beyond the event to offer additional digital training once they realise the potential. So could it lead to more virtual events perhaps during the year under the Lincolnshire Show banner? So, kind of almost extending the brand of the Lincolnshire Show virtually throughout the year. Jane, is that something that you've considered as well, perhaps?
Yes, it is. One of the things we've done, we built the platform to actually sort of help the charity long term. So we've got other events coming up, which hopefully we can hold, like Countryside Links, which is in October. We've got Food and Gift in November. But also what I feel with the platform next year as well, with the platform, we'll be able to use it alongside the Lincolnshire Show. So it'll be a marketing tool going forward. So we will use the platform. It's not just got one life of one day of the Lincolnshire Show. It's got lots more opportunities, and we can do agricultural seminars, etc. So there's lots of things that we can going forward to reach people in their own homes.
Great. It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? That actually, having moved something on virtually like this, then it becomes almost, you consider how it becomes a permanent value for you, or a permanent fixture for the future of the show. So you're obviously starting to think about that.
Yeah.
That's great, Jane. And I'm going to perhaps leave it with you, because I know we are up against time. So I suppose, Jane, from your perspective, a couple of things that you come in. Is there anything, because obviously I'm the one who knows least about it here. So is there anything that we've missed, that we haven't spoken about, that you'd really like to say? No, I'd like us to make sure that we've mentioned this on this webinar. So that's the first question. If I may also then, since for you to say, okay, so if I'm, I want to participate in the show, either as an individual guest, as a member of the farming community, as a member of the business community. So tell us now, what do we do now to help to be able to participate in it? So kind of two questions, if you like. Anything we've missed, and what do we actually now have to do to help to participate, Jane?
Okay, well, first of all, you can participate in the morning if you want to go along to the networking event that Steph's doing. That would be a great event, and we've got a good speaker for that as well. But also, we're asking people to download the show ticket. It's a free ticket. We're asking them to download it so they feel part of the show, and then they will get all the details of what's coming up. Things are changing all the time. We're asking people on show days to be in their homes, perhaps put bunting up, etc., to feel part of the show, and we're asking people as well to promote on social media what they've been doing, what they're doing on the show days, what they've enjoyed, what they haven't enjoyed. And I'm sure we'll take feedback later so that we can see, and hopefully, we'll deliver a great show. There'll be too much to see in one day as the Lincolnshire Show. That's why it's a 2-day show. So there will be an opportunity for people who haven't engaged with us on the Wednesday to then engage after that, to have a look to see what happens at a Lincolnshire Show.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're up against our time, colleagues. So I'll draw our discussion to a conclusion there. But I'd just like to finish by thanking you all, actually on behalf of the Lincolnshire community, for having been so entrepreneurial in taking what I think most people would look at and said, no, you can't do that. You can't put the Lincolnshire Show online, and you're going to prove that you can absolutely do that. And not only replicate the experience, but extend that experience, enrich the experience, and perhaps make it a permanent feature of Lincolnshire life going forward. So I wish you all absolutely the best of luck. I look forward to seeing you there. Steph, it looks like, Steph, you want to have the final word. No surprise there. Go ahead, Steph.
Sorry, not the final. It's just the one thing that we just give you 1 minute to explain. You said, what's the call for action for people? Well, as part of our breakfast event, we've got our the community conference is what we're calling it, and we've decided to put a different spin on this. So rather than us as the conference organisers creating breakout rooms, what we're actually asking individual people to do is to create their own breakout room and then link it to this event. So the theme of our conference is the future. We want people to reimagine what the future will look like. We've got a situation now where the ideas, however clever and great thinking our leadership is in this country, they're not going to come up with the ideas for the future. The ideas for the future sit with the people. And so what we've decided to do with the community conference is to flip that round and call out to people to put their own discussion panels together on the future of whatever subject they choose to do. So I've got a couple that have come in this morning. I've got a panelist that's going to do a session on the future of cooperation. So there's lots and lots of different themes. It can be we've got the future of retirement living, the future of education, the future of farming, the future of food. So we want all the experts to put panels together, and if they go to the login, they'll see how to set their own panel up, and then we'll put guests into their panel discussions. So it's a very different concept that we're rolling out here. I think it's just important for people to know that and really get engaged with that, especially people like Gary Bosworth. Let's get Gary involved.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And that's what it's about, really. It's about doing things in different ways, looking at things in different ways.
That's great. And actually what it does, it provides a really neat connection between the way that you're putting this conference on and actually the show on and the subject of the discussions. And actually, I think there's an eternal truth, actually, to be honest, that I know you and I share, Steph, that ideas always, the best ones always come from the bottom. But I think that's always been the case.
Absolutely.
It's an opportunity to put that into practice, as it were. And Gary's just made a note, so he is going to be there. So there you go. Okay, well, colleagues, that's been a fantastic discussion. Again, well done to all of you for having been so innovative. And I think everybody's now, you'll whet their appetite. Everybody's really looking forward to what's going to be a fantastic event. So thank you for that. Good luck. And I shall hand back to Rishi to finish us off. Rishi.
Thank you so much, Craig. And, what a story of resilience, and who would ever have thought, that you could do this and in the time that you had. So well done to this team, who's really taken it forward. And I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful show. If I can take, the liberty of just very quickly showing the creative for the event, just so that everyone's able to see it and get familiar with it as it pans out on social media and right across. So that's it, 24th of June, online for the first time. So we all really look forward. And just to add to Craig's note of thanks, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you've got such a busy diary with a few days left, but we are with you, the business school and all of us, and we wish you the best for this event. That's going to be iconic in keeping the wheels moving of Lincolnshire. So thanks so much. So just for the benefit of our listeners, we've got the Resilient Lincolnshire series that continues every week, and do join us next week when we talk about yet another topic as important as this, to be able to keep Lincolnshire going beyond the curve. So good luck, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.